All of these creativity techniques are all well and good, but without embedding creativity within the organisation, then of course it's largely a waste of time, an entertaining waste of time, but nevertheless doesn't really add the value that we're looking for to the business. So this newsletter piece is all about embedding creativity. There are a number of key roles that I would recommend when installing creativity within an organisation, and one of the key ones is very clearly the champion. This is the person who's going to lay awake at night worrying about the implementation of creativity to make sure that the thinking across the organisation is being embedded, and the person who's going to lead the charge may or may not be supported by a coordinator. There are a number of things that need to be organised, diaries need to be set, meetings need to be arranged, and maybe a creativity coordinator is a useful player to sit alongside the champion, although it may be the same person. Then there's the sponsor. This is a high-level, board-level appointment, someone who can advise the champion with regard to key timings, identify strategic issues that perhaps will benefit from creativity, to generally act as a friend and an encourager for the initiative across the organisation, who can make things happen as blocks are put up and put in the way, giving the whole programme some credibility. We've then clearly got the facilitators. Now these are key roles. These are the people who are going to make the creative problem solving sessions run with a bang. These are people who are mastering the art of improvisation, understanding the techniques, understanding the processes that sit behind the techniques. And of course, all this creativity, rather counterintuitively, is very structured in its approach, and these facilitators are the people who need to be skilled in that particular area. And I'd recommend probably across an organisation at least 2 people who can play off each other, who can lend some support and share notes, etc. Of course, we've then got the Creativity Club members. These are individuals who are volunteering to give of their time. They don't need to be experts at all in creative problem solving, but they do need to be prepared to come along and play with a range of the techniques for a range of the problem owners. No meeting should ever last more than an hour, so it shouldn't be a massive burden. And you want people from across the entire organisation at different levels, from the very senior levels to very junior levels, people who are relatively new to the organisation, because the champion in putting a meeting together, in putting a creative problem-solving session together, will want to draw from a range of available skills, from some people who are very familiar with the issue maybe, but you certainly want people in that session who are relatively naive and know little about the particular problem in hand. So that's kind of a key area that needs to be addressed. The whole implementation then depends very heavily upon planning, and it, again, rather counterintuitively, it needs to be rather structured in its approach. The recommendation is in the short term, the immediate implementation, to gather together a relatively small group of individuals that, as I've said before, are prepared to play, which effectively forms a fledgling creativity club, allowing the champion at a future point to pick from a range of people that are available to put together a particular session. They need to put a schedule of meetings together, so regardless of topics, regardless of problem owners identified, I recommend putting a schedule of maybe 1 meeting a month together for 6 months. And again, no meeting should ever last more than an hour from start to finish. Within that particular session, that hour-long session, one needs to identify a problem owner. That's the person who's going to act as the key reference point, who's going to be the beneficiary of the creative problem-solving session. You need a facilitator who will take responsibility for the process in that meeting. And you probably need up to 4 others. I'd recommend no more than 6 in total. So 4 others to join those 2 key roles, 2 of whom know something about the issue, drawn from the Creativity Club membership, and maybe 2 who know relatively little about the problem, because what we're trying to do is introduce that naivety. We're trying to break the patterning in order to add the creativity. Of course, one of the key elements is not to brief the attendees in advance of the issue being addressed. If you tell all 6 people, clearly the problem owner and facilitator will probably be aware, but if you tell the other 4 that next Thursday there's going to be an hour-long meeting over a lunch, maybe with some sandwiches, on a particular topic, then they will not be able to help themselves but start to address that particular problem in advance to try and generate the solutions, which is clearly what you don't want. So although it rather freaks people out as they get used to it, to invite people along to a session about which they know very little or nothing is absolutely key. Now, the early meetings of the Creativity Club inevitably will all be about the techniques. The important thing is for people to get their heads around how the techniques work. It's rather a strange process in the first instance. The techniques will therefore be the focus, and the problems will effectively be the vehicles to allow you to explore the techniques. But over time that will shift. As people become more familiar with the techniques, then the emphasis will shift towards problem solving, and the techniques themselves become the vehicle for the problem solving. So there's kind of a shift in balance that gives you an indication of how mature the organisation is in these particular processes. Key to everything is to make sure that the Creativity Club activities are communicated and success is celebrated across the organisation. The organisation needs to know this is happening, and this is happening with a determination to make things, to challenge what's happening across the organisation, to introduce novel and useful changes. And novelty is the absolute key. Don't forget, so much of these initiatives will be instantly rejected because they don't fit with the normal way of doing things. And this needs a determination to drive these initiatives through, which is where the champion and the sponsors need to work closely with the problem owners to make sure they get the impetus to drive things forward. And over time, the word starts to spread and the embedding starts to take place.